Alan Saunders, Pittsburgh Sports Now, is our guest on Sports Radio 93.7 The Fan. Speaking of Dan Moore Jr., Pro Football Network, they floated out the hypothetical that Dan Moore Jr. could be some trade bait for a team that needs an experienced left tackle. I think in their scenario, it was Washington who would be offering just a conditional sixth-round pick. Maybe not necessarily that trade, but what would the price have to be from another team for the Steelers to consider it a smart move to part ways there?
Well, it's a complicated process here because I don't think they're in a position where, I like Dylan Cook and Spencer Anderson a good bit, but those guys have a combined 0 NFL games played. Like, they're not going to go into the season without a backup tackle. So they would have to do it early enough that there would be someone available for them to bring in to kind of backfill as the swing tackle, or they would have to do that now, sign another swing tackle now, plan ahead of time. They could do that. But like a conditional sixth, get out of town. Like I think Steelers fans are going to be astonished at the dollar amounts contract that Dan Moore gets when he leaves Pittsburgh and signs as a free agent somewhere else next year. This is a player with a lot of value. Even middle-of-the-road starting tackles are extremely valuable. I would aim way higher than a conditional sixth-round pick.
Yeah, almost 50 starts for Dan Moore since he was drafted in 2021, and all of them at left tackle. Flipping to Najee Harris now, because there's another wrinkle in this story. Paul Zeiss came out and said that Najee Harris requested that the Steelers decline his option so he could hit free agency earlier. His agent fired back, saying that the little birdie was wrong that Paul was hearing from. But first, where do you come down on the Steelers' decision to decline Najee Harris?
I think it shows their commitment to positional value. I think it brings into question what happens with the future of the running back position. But I think it's a very defensible decision on the dollars and cents. And I think the ability that Jaylen Warren has shown gives them the what they would need to make that kind of decision. Sometimes you look at a move and you say, hey, this is a bad one, but we have to make it. We don't have anybody else. I think Jaylen Warren gives them somebody else. But if they're getting ready to move on from Najee Harris after the 2024 season, I mean, they've got some work to do. That's for sure. There's nobody beyond Jaylen Warren. Cordell Patterson is a kick returner and a third down back, but he's 33. He's not going to be even a 1B to Jaylen Warren in the future, even though he is here on a 2-year deal. So I think they're setting the table for that, though. I'd have a pretty hard time seeing Najee Harris coming back after that decision. Felt like if they were going to try to work out a long-term deal before that deadline was the time to do it. But we'll see how things go as they move forward.
Then the other part of that story, do you think that there was anything in Najee Harris that actually requested to have the option declined?
I mean, look, I think there's probably a little bit of truth to both sides here. Look, whether or not Najee Harris actually said, like, get me out of here or don't pick this option up, I think you can make a very good argument that it makes sense for Najee Harris to want out of Pittsburgh if it doesn't look like he's going to sign a long-term deal here. Like, what's the point if you're a running back of spending that one more year? You only get so many. Spending that one more year in a place that is not the long-term option. Wouldn't you rather go shop your services a year younger? I think there's legitimate concerns about his fit in Arthur Smith's scheme. He did much better last season when the Steelers were running the gap, the sort of the old school. They put in the trap plays. They were doing wham stuff, and they were like that's what he was having his success on. And now it's a wide zone scheme that seems, on paper anyway, like it's a lot better suited to a back like Jaylen Warren than it is like Najee Harris. So whether he said it or not, I think it makes sense for him to have those feelings. And so, yeah, if they're not going to come to an agreement on a long-term deal and the sides are far apart, why wouldn't he want to leave 1 year earlier and move on and get that big contract while he's still a year younger?
Do you think Cam Hayward should consider taking that pay cut? I know he said he doesn't want to, and he thinks people are ridiculous for suggesting it, but should he consider it to help out the team?
I don't really think it's necessary. They have a lot of cap space right now. They restructured Alex Highsmith's deal before the draft and didn't really do anything with that money that they created. Now, I think there's one way here, right? And Cam Hayward is not a young man, and he's not won a Super Bowl. And if there is a truly game-changing player on the other line, and Omar Khan says, "Hey, man, we could have Ayuk, but I need $5 million to make it work." Okay. I think at that point, maybe not 5 million, but I think at that point, I think maybe you could make an argument that Cam Hayward should think about it. But they can restructure his contract using void years. They can give him an extension, whether he intends to play out the extension or not, to reduce the cap hit in 2024 without him needing to take a pay cut. So I think it's a pretty rare scenario that he would have to if he doesn't want to. And it seems like he doesn't want to. So I'm not expecting it. But there is that maybe 1 or 2% chance where if they get a big fish on the other line and they need the money to make it work, well, hey, if you want to win a Super Bowl, sometimes that's what you got to do. Tom Brady did it for a long time.
Does Russell Wilson start every game for the Steelers in 2024?
I think this is an easy no for me. I think there's just too many uncertainties, right? I mean, Russell Wilson wasn't great, the last 2 years in Denver. Certainly, if he doesn't play as well as he did last year, he won't be asked to start every game. And then also, you have a guy who's been sacked a ton at his age. Guys just don't stay healthy, right? And so I think there's a very good chance that we see Justin Fields. I think there's a chance Justin Fields could just come in training camp and win the job. I know Mike Tomlin has said, Russell Wilson has pole position and he's going to get the first chance, but that doesn't hit the same when you're on a 1-year veteran minimum contract. Like the Steelers have no skin in the game in Russell Wilson. If they go out there in the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks training camp, 3 weeks training camp, 4 weeks training camp, and Justin Fields just looks better every single day, I think he's going to play. Like they're not going to put their finger on the scale here. There's no financial reason for them to. So I think there's a very good chance we see Justin Fields in the Steelers uniform at some point this year.
If you had to put an amount of starts that each of those guys makes, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, this season in 17 games, what number would you put next to both of them?
Man, that's pretty tough. I'll go 13 Wilson, 4 Fields. That's a shot in the dark, though. I mean, there's not a lot of science behind that prognostication.